That's all of our show today. I'd like to thank Aaron for sitting in and doing the news. We're going to play, I guess we're going to go out with a little bit of videos from our contest submissions. So you can check those out. Our reporter contest is still running until the end of the month. Get your entry in. We have, if you go to Infowars.com/reporter-contest, you can see all the rules. There's only 4 rules to enter. We want to see what you guys can come up with, but we're really looking for that next Infowarrior. You could come in, sit where I'm sitting, do the news, probably more eloquently than I can. And, and also go be sent out for reports, do some video editing. I mean, we really are, we're doing multimedia. We're doing it the way it should be, fast, nimble, as quick as we can, with truth on our side. And if you're not subscribing to this right now, prisonplanet.tv, please do so. It helps us out. It supports us, lets us buy more equipment, pay to get more people here, pay to fly people in. I mean, it's the way we're doing it. So with that, Mike Adams, thanks for coming in. My name is Rob Dew, and this is Infowars Nightly News.
Christian Andrew reporting. This is Information Warfare. Today's topics: court hears arguments in lawsuit against Obama indefinite detention law. Twitter, spamming celebrities, not okay. Advocating murder is fine. Here's the news. Judge asks government lawyers if NDAA can be used on ordinary citizens. A federal court in New York heard arguments Thursday for the preliminary injunction against the National Defense Authorization Act, also known as the NDAA. The bill signed by Obama that legislates for the indefinite detention of American citizens without trial. No habeas corpus. U.S. District Judge Catherine Forrest heard testimony from 7 witnesses, including MIT professor Noam Chomsky, Pentagon Papers source Daniel Ellsberg, and Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, author, and Middle East expert Chris Hedges. Hedges himself filed the class action lawsuit claiming that the indefinite detention provision of the legislation, otherwise known as the Homeland Battlefield Bill, could see him sent to Guantanamo Bay for simply doing his job, and at the very least would have a chilling effect on the work of journalists and activists.
Now that Ron Paul's heroic presidential campaign is drawing to a close, millions of liberty lovers nationwide are asking themselves what they can do to continue promoting his cause in a large-scale fashion. Well, I recently scored an exclusive interview with Libertarian presidential nominee Gary Johnson, who says voting for him will help make major inroads for the movement.
First promise I'm making if elected President of the United States is I promise to submit a balanced budget to Congress. Now, that isn't promising to balance the budget. That is promising to submit a balanced budget to Congress, which would be a $1.4 trillion reduction in federal spending. The next promise I'm making is I promise to veto any legislation where expenses exceed revenue. Congress is going to end up overriding my veto. But I just suggest to you that with those 2 promises, spending will be lower than any other scenario that you could possibly come up with. Because submitting a balanced budget to Congress, a $1.4 trillion reduction in federal spending, imagine the debate and the discussion that goes along with a $1.4 trillion reduction in federal spending.
The United States' sluggish economy and high corporate tax rate is also prompting the former New Mexico governor to lobby for tax reform.
I am also advocating on the part of the fair tax. I'm advocating throwing out the entire federal tax system. So no more income tax, no more corporate tax, no more withholdings from your payroll check. Replacing all of that with the fair tax, which is a 23% consumption tax, which ends up being cost neutral over a very short amount of time. It's really the answer to making American goods and services competitive. It's the answer when it comes to exports and China. And in a 0 corporate tax rate environment, if the private sector does not create tens of millions of jobs, I don't know under what case the private sector would create tens of millions of jobs.
According to the Commission on Presidential Debates, third-party candidates can appear on the same stage as the Democratic and Republican nominees if 5 pre-selected polling organizations have them polling at 15% or greater, and if they are on enough state ballots, which Gary Johnson is. Despite the media blackout Gary Johnson is experiencing, respected polling firm PPP currently has him polling at 7% nationally and at over 20% in his home state.
Over here in the United States, we are the worst pushers of this because this is where Monsanto's based. And our food czar currently, Mike Taylor, used to be Monsanto's lawyer. He's also responsible for the reason why genetically modified foods, or GMO, monster frankenfoods made in the lab, are not labeled. He then went from being Monsanto's lawyer over to the head of the FDA. He's the single person who made the decision not to let GMOs be labeled. Well, there's been a groundswell of people all across the country and world that do not want these genetically modified foods. They're damaging not only to the people, they believe they're hurting the bees and killing the bees, but they completely decimate the organic and natural environment. So basically, California and Vermont right now are trying to get labels made mandatory on genetically modified food. But Monsanto is literally threatening to sue the state of Vermont. And you can bet he'll come after California, too, because he went after Ben & Jerry's to stop them from labeling their milk not having certain hormones. So this is a typical 1% monster, Monsanto. He's one of those companies that is power broking all the governments around the world. And now they've gotten Whole Foods to surrender. Whole Foods has just decided that they're going to get into bed with Monsanto. So your food is no longer going to be purely organic at Whole Foods. So I highly recommend boycotting them because if you think that you're getting organic food, you won't be.
The media has been going hysterical about this situation. Trayvon Martin was, of course, killed by the suspect, who is known as what's his name? George Zimmerman. Now, we only know what we have been told. The news media does not have accurate information to actually report on the case fully. There has been numerous blurbs and this and different things pinpointing things at Zimmerman, pinpointing things at Trayvon Martin. What really needs to happen is this case needs to go to trial and the truth needs to come out. I know the media is trying to build up this whole thing about black, white, or Mexican or some race war. But the thing is, all of this is deception and all this is just used as hysterical and mass hysteria to stir up the population. This is nothing but another tactic that the global elite and that the prostitutes have been using for a long time. You see, every day inside America, white people are killed by black people. There are some black people who are killed by white people, Asians and Mexicans and so forth. The case is, it shouldn't be about race. The case is, it should be about, was this young man murdered by an individual who did not have the right to?
When speaking to independents and liberals, I always hear that they wish they had a viable alternative candidate. How is it that this phrase keeps turning up? Well, most likely it's the result of the branding and the use of buzzwords in the media. Alternative candidates are always surrounded by the use of keywords that brand them, their names and their movements. Regardless of how popular their viewpoints are, people are always told that they just don't have popular support. The establishment machines go to work to diffuse any potential movements before it starts. We were told that a vote for Ross Perot was a vote for Bill Clinton, that a vote for Ralph Nader and Ron Paul in 2008 was a vote for Barack Obama. Now, through the internet and the use of social networking, users of the internet have the ability to see that there really is popular support out there, that they're not alone. And the mainstream media has had to go into propaganda overdrive to counteract this momentum. In 2008, Ron Paul was completely ignored, but this time it's impossible to ignore him, and so they resort to slander.
free energy technology could, in theory, permanently immunize us from those harms. So what can we do? How do we fight? It's obvious to me that we use the weapons of the globalists against them. By raising awareness through the internet and financially supporting worthy causes like the Ron Paul campaign, PrisonPlanet.tv, the Resonance Project, and others. I'm afraid the time is drawing near. Now, at the same time, there is an obvious awakening on a global scale which no doubt the globalists fear. So, Infowarriors, what is it going to be? Sit there and hope that someone else does something about our obvious dilemma? Or do something with the little time we have left? Continuing to ignore this problem will no doubt lead to the imminent takeover of the little constitutional rights we have left. There will be a time when the police state is so obvious, so powerful, so overwhelming, that resistance at that time could prove futile.
And sense of community that allows them to build complex societies. But the analogy goes deeper. Humans and ants both face enemies that seek to destroy their way of life using similar tactics.
We need to do this every day of the week and just really brainwash people.
The Ichneumon wasp is a particularly dangerous enemy to ants because of the type of warfare it uses against them. When the wasp enters the colony, ants immediately begin attacking them to defend their queen. But the wasp emits a chemical that causes the ants to begin fighting amongst each other, distracting them from the real enemy. As humans, we must remember that an imagined or scapegoat enemy can be used to create fighting, while the real enemy lays its plans in plain view. The wasp will lay its parasitic egg in the colony, as the ants are hopeless to defend against it. You must keep in mind as you make your fight, is it the cause of liberty and justice, or is it an imagined fight, designed to distract you from the true enemy?